Hey there, Bruce, and welcome back to Amnea 28, the demo, of course. Let's just carry on where we left off. I'd say we must be coming to the end of the demo at this point, but I'm curious to see what horrific things... I hope there's going to be a big scare before the end, you know? Something. The day was coming to an end. The darkness reigned outside. I couldn't distinguish tree outlines even though they grew near the hotel. Unlike dark and frozen world beyond Amnea's borders, a relaxed and peaceful atmosphere ruled inside the lounge. Deborah was sitting majestically on the couch with one leg crossed over the other. Joshini kept throwing glances at the door, and I'd bet all my money on him planning an outing. Vincent was reading a book. Judging by its tattered cover, he must have taken it from the library. Unia and Cordelia were standing near the opposite wall and quietly discussing something, and Eli was showing off in the middle of the room, kind of like a magnet attracting everyone's attention to him. I know y'all are dying of boredom, so I'll liven things up. Are we actually? I wanted to discuss plans for tomorrow. How about a tour around the sanctuary? I've already formed a dozen possible routes. Joshini suggested an outing. Who would have thought? Eli winked to Deborah. Be a good girl and Shen will show you the world of unforgettable adventures. Just imagine, rise before the sunrise, wander through the damp, dark forest using barely visible trails, go around endless snags and fallen trees, get your feet wet in a small bog, face hit by thorny branches, yourself entangled in bushes, favourite clothes torn, roll down a cliff, decorate your delicate skin with beautiful purple bruises, fall into someone's fresh droppings. But at last, get to the covered glade and greet the dawn with a clear conscience. Vincent laughed into his fist. Simply wonderful. How romantic. Obviously, Cordelia was completely oblivious to sarcasm and Eli's suggestion. There's nothing romantic about it. Shen, would you invite Deborah to a romantic date? Happily. Afraid I'll have to decline my poor semblance of romantics. Too bad. Guess I'm not good enough for you. Oh, you broke his heart, ruthless woman. Someone help me here. It's too dark outside for a walk anyway. Eli, you're our idea generator. Offer us something exciting. Well, since you're so eager. He made a dramatic pause, during which Deborah had time to fake a sigh 5 times, whistle a few tunes and make a couple of funny faces. Let's have a tournament of sorting out my academic debts. Pay your debts yourself. Such a shame, you really don't get it after all. Eli crossed his hands and pronounced some incomprehensible phrase in foreign language. He looked very proud of himself. Or to put it the other way, have fun while you're young, since soon it's wife kids pension. Once again, academic debts that must be closed. Actually, you've said your soap flea speculation head magics? No way. That's great, Cordelia. I'm nowhere near that good with foreign languages. I've been travelling a lot in my childhood. Some words stuck with me. Now that's a memory. Wait, does that mean she was travelling alone, without Unia? Cordelia has always been good at memorising languages, and someone should run unknown phrases through a translator first, otherwise you can end up saying something very, very embarrassing. Personal experience? A warning. Unia gave Eli a cold stare and smirked, like it would have been a great pleasure for her to see him taken down a notch. Forget what Eli suggests. I've got a way better idea. Ladies and gents, what do you see outside? A forest? I suspect the blood-soaked woodland walks aren't involved. Too bad. Y'all are so boring, it's obvious. Eli made such a heavy sigh that he has just learned the full depth of human stupidity. That he and Deborah exchanged looks and smiled wickedly. Frightening combo. It's a night outside. We're in a house in the middle of a forest. Closest population area is hell knows how far away. Do you understand what it means? You've decided to murder us? Goodness, come on, use your brains a little. Don't beat around the bush. Horror stories, scaremongering, tales which would freeze your blood and deprive you of sleep. It was rather obvious indeed. Why not? Sounds like fun. Agreed, the atmosphere here is perfect. I wanted to participate too. And you won't panic? Such stories are usually told in the dark. Well, I'll be with you all. Nothing to be afraid of. If you say so. And so our night of horror stories has begun. The wind was rustling outside the window, the logs crackling in the fireplace. We spread out the cushions and sat closer to the fire. I found myself between Vincent and Deborah. Cordelia sat near Joshini. She was beaming with joy and inspiration, as if she was going to have a cup of tea with something tasty, not to tell and listen to scary tales. Unia, as always, had an impenetrable expression. Well, my friends, let's get started. Eli sat with his back to the fire and the outline of his figure was illuminated. Come on, don't stall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our evening of horrors. Damn you, Eli, you got me. Great start, Eli. Keep at it. But no screamers. Deborah loved horror stories and dreaded them at the same time. She's one of those folks who would enthusiastically invite her friends to a cursed house, get freaked out by the creaky floorboard and run away screaming, and to suggest repeating the experience the next day. Deborah, do you know what usually happens to the likes of you in horror movies? Huh? They're the first ones to die. No matter, I'm an experienced exorcist. You wouldn't believe how many movies with banishings involved I've watched. That'll surely help me hypothetically. Don't worry, we'll handle it. I'll take care of the monster, while he'd be frozen in fear of your exorcism. Don't you start now. Jashini just laughed in response. Don't dwell on it, Deborah. The likes of Jashini are the ones to go. Some consolation. What makes you say that? Jashini seemed to be a little offended. His voice sounded unusually dry. I think we strayed from the topic. Besides, there's plenty of us here, so we'd fight back any dark forces. In the worst case, Eli would summon the ancient evil of our aid. As if on cue, we all looked up at the ceiling. Somewhere up there, Nolan resided in his office. Yeah, alright. Let's continue. Is everyone ready to delve into the atmosphere of blood-freezing terror and maddening nightmares? Yeah, sure. We dare touch the veil between life and death, stare into the abyss of insanity, risk being forever caught in its tenacious claws. We will. Damn right. Will you dare throw away everything that is human and enjoy the wild primeval instinct, hungry for blood and destruction? Way too dragged introduction, Eli. I'm already bored. Stop talking gibberish. You sure are damn downers, you know that? You're the one who's gone mad with indignation if we fall asleep. Stop beating around the bush. Fine, you dim-witted fellas. Who would like to begin? Eli, you're the chattiest among us. Why don't you give us an example? Well then, sit back and get ready. Very soon you'll have a few grey hairs in your hair. We're already sitting, so stop slacking. Eli cleared his throat and spoke in a quiet, heartfelt voice. Once upon a time, a long time ago, several people gathered together in a huge house. The house stood so deep in the woods that no cry for help could reach the outside ears. With no possibility to contact the outside world, they found themselves alone against the wild nature and the horrors lurking behind every corner. One dark night, they gathered around a fireplace, and a suspicious rustle came from the main entrance. It was getting louder and louder. Folks were getting afraid of those disgusting sounds. It was as if worms crawled inside of their own heads, eating holes in the soft tissue. And then, just when enduring the abhorrent sounds became unbearable, one of them grabbed a knife and screamed, "Fear not, I'll get them out of your heads." Deborah was clearly having fun, probably more than the others. Quite amusing. Keep at it, Eli. Cordelia spoke in a perfectly even and not tiny bit afraid voice. You weren't scared? Oh, have I done something wrong? Well, it's customary to dread the scary tales. Look at Deborah. I get it. Let's go again. I'll be afraid this time. What's the matter? It seems to have obliterated his enthusiasm. An act of inhumane cruelty. I don't think I've ever seen Eli be so gloomy. I've had my spirits knocked out. Sorry, it wasn't my intention. Never mind him. He simply doesn't know any good horror stories. I'll definitely get scared next time, Eli. My passion is all but burned out. Thou not value me? Alright, does anyone want to continue or is it over? Vincent looked mockingly at the half-dead Deborah and the enthusiastic Cordelia. There was also Jashini, whose silence, combined with an impenetrable smile, looked very suspicious. Oh, okay. So now we get to pick a character to follow? That's interesting. And that's... who's that? Is that a thing? Well, let's just start with Deborah, I suppose. No one else? Very well, youngsters. Behold the master at work. I know a lot of amazing horror stories, a fair warning. If I get serious, you would leave this room completely grey-haired and with an incurable mental trauma. Tell us something less dangerous. Come on, it's more fun that way. Us getting scared to death and running out of the lounge screaming would definitely disturb the professor. I couldn't imagine Unia running away with wild screams, but keep it to myself. Fine, as you wish. I'll go easy on y'all. You ready? Then let's begin. Show us what you got. Deborah threw a short glance at Eli, made an evil smirk, and spoke with a quiet, mysterious voice. Once upon a time, on the deep, dark planet, in the deep, dark country, near the deep, dark city, inside the deep, dark forest, in the deep, dark hotel, in the deep, dark office, with the deep, dark door, lived the deep, dark professor with a bright, white laptop. During one deep dark night, a foolish boy decided to go inside the deep dark hotel. He walked up the deep dark stairs and into the deep dark cabinet. Please stop saying deep dark. There in the deep dark armchair was sitting a deep dark professor, and he roared, "Turn in study materials on time." Nolan, no! Here, hush hush, Eli. Everything's fine. The professor isn't here. He's inside his office. What a surprising range of feelings. How dare you tell something so horrid? I warned you. My life will never be the same. I wasn't scared at all. Can you tell us another story? A normal one this time. Like I said, I've got an arsenal of them. So in a deep dark... kidding. And out prepared to face an unimaginable dread. Deborah brushed off the joking attitude. The sudden change in her demeanour made everyone uncomfortable. Even the air in the lounge felt cold. The story happened long ago in a faraway country. The country was ruled by a royal family famous for their kindness and generosity. The king loved his youngest daughter far more than anything. She was so beautiful that good-looking princes from all over the world come to the castle to ask for her hand. But the king was in no hurry to marry off his favourite. He found a groom for all his daughters, and newlyweds departed to other kingdoms, all except the youngest, whom he had no intention of letting go. But the time was passing, a new daughter was born, one even more beautiful than our princess. The king devoted all his time to the new girl, not giving so much as an extra glance to his former favourite. And as days went by, the poor princess's life became sadder. She was transferred into a tall tower so that she wouldn't get in the king's eyesight. The princess started to weep and cry, cursing ruthless fate. The castle's inhabitants were so fed up with her heart-rending moans that the king couldn't stand it and ordered his daughter to be locked in the darkest and deepest underground dungeon. No matter how much the princess begged for mercy, no matter how tightly she clung to the rough stone of the walls with their soft white fingers, the guards still threw her into the sinking black hole and locked the strong oak door with a heavy bar. The princess sat there for a long time, weeping and begging forgiveness for sins known only to her father, but the only answer was silence. Darkness gathered around her, and not a speck of light penetrated the nightmarish chamber. The princess was chilled to the bone, and she began to feel unbearably thirsty no matter how many times she tried to shout out to the guards. No one came to her. The princess realized that she was to rot in a filthy, dank dungeon just because the king father had abandoned her to the mercy of fate, but she wouldn't give up. After examining the walls of the dungeon, she almost immediately found a passageway leading into the cold darkness. Having no other choice, the princess boldly went forward, hoping to use the underground caverns to get out. The princess wandered for a long time through the endless labyrinth filled with inky darkness. Water dripped from above, someone's bones crunched beneath her feet, and just when the last bit of hope and strength was about to leave her, the princess suddenly heard a strange noise. Fear was stronger than fatigue, and the princess ran forward, wishing only to escape the terrible sounds, but they came closer and closer, filling every corridor of the underground labyrinth. The princess was surrounded by a snarl mixed with disgusting smacking noises, as if a huge beast was tearing its victim's body with its sharp fangs and then chewing, crunching, chopping, pouring black blood on the ground. The princess ran with all her might, but she knew that she wouldn't get away. The king sent her to certain death, becoming some nightmarish beast's lunch, and she had no chance of escaping the labyrinth. Instead of dying of hunger and thirst, she'd fall prey to the beast that lives in the underground caves. And again there was an eerie roar, but from the opposite direction. The princess realized that she was trapped. The monsters surrounded her, ready to pounce and chew her arms and legs off and split her head open like a walnut. Not knowing where to hide, the princess sat against the cold, damp wall of the cave, and then an eerie, wheezing breath sounded nearby. Unable to stand the horror, the princess squeezed her eyes shut and covered her ears, but she still heard the heavy, shuffling footsteps. They came very close, and the princess felt the hot, stinking breath on her skin. It was so disgusting that she almost fainted. The huge teeth clicked right in front of her face. The princess prepared to feel terrifying pain. The monster's muzzle came close to her ear. Her skin felt its hot, almost scalding breath. The beast's jaws closed and then opened again. And just when the princess had stopped breathing because of ever-rising fear, she heard a hoarse voice coming from the creepy mouth. "So sis, her dad has traded you for a new favourite as well." Damn, that was a tough one. Very disturbing. Not bad. She survived, right? Right, the princess? So the king didn't marry off his daughters, but sent them to a dungeon instead, where they became horrid monsters, and the same fate awaited the princess. Exactly. So horrible. He must be punished. The bestial daughters would break free, and the day of reckoning shall come. I like it, a bloodbath. And the blood of the sinner shall be spilled all over the royal palace. Granted, he deserves to be punished, but must it be so cruel? Of course, it's a horror story after all. Gotta be spectacular. Isn't the inevitable of being a new victim being sent to the dungeon the actual horrid part? When the youngest daughter ceases to please the king's eye, he will rid of her, just like the heroine. That's just awful. The story definitely lacks a prince from the overseas land who could jump in and save the day. Listen, Shen, that's no fairy tale about good and justice, it's a scary tale. Is there a difference? Duh, naturally, scary tales always have bad endings. Looks like Jashini didn't approve of such a narrative. Oh, okay. I'd like to listen to Cordelia. Her bright eyes were lit up with anticipation. Gladly. Well, this moment would have happened sooner or later anyway. Nobody expected an actual horror story from Cordelia. It simply wasn't her style, but we supported her, especially considering her zeal. Make the blood freeze in our veins. Don't be shy, we're all friends here. I won't let you down. I just remembered something interesting. She coughed with a serious look. I'll tell you about the girl who moved in on the top floor of a newly built high-rise. Since the house was almost empty, she never crossed paths with her neighbours, which suited her just fine. Only sometimes she rode the elevator with a strange man dressed in a black cloak and hat. The girl was so loaded with studies and new impressions that she paid no attention to him. And so one unremarkable day, she ran into the elevator, late for her morning lectures. Inside, as usual, a man in a black raincoat was waiting. As always, he didn't make a sound and just stared somewhere with his unblinking black eyes. The girl, as usual, paid no attention to him. Her mind was occupied with a difficult lecture. And then the man suddenly did something unexpected, stretched out his hand and pushed one of the buttons on the elevator panel. It stopped abruptly. The girl staggered and almost fell. In desperation, she clutched at the cloak of the man standing nearby, but as soon as she touched the black fabric, he vaporized. His hat dropped to the floor as his coat hung in the girl's arms, as if there was no material man of blood and flesh under the clothes. Our heroine had no time to think of anything, as suddenly, as the light in the elevator went out, she was left alone in the dark, not knowing what was going on. She didn't even know what floor she was on. She tried pushing floor buttons at random, but nothing happened. She was stuck. Filled with an itchy, toothache-like anxiety, she tried to fumble for a button on the panel to contact the technicians. But no matter how many times she pushed the button, the elevator panel stayed dead, as if it had mere fiction, a place to put the elevator as a prank. Then the girl called for help. She screamed and screamed, but oppressive silence was the only answer. Only a faint howl of drought told her that time had not frozen. Told her time had not frozen, but continued to flow in its usual rhythm. Like I said, the house was almost empty, but the girl refused to believe that she was the only one living in it, and so she continued crying for help, but no one came to her rescue. Having handled her panic, the girl rummaged through her bag in search of a cell phone. She dug through the makeup and notebooks for a long time and soon realized the awful thing. The smartphone was left lying in the apartment. The girl was exhausted. She sat on the floor and burst into tears. Each of them was filled with despair, which had overtaken our heroine. As the panic attack passed, thoughts of the strange man in the black coat took over. Was he a ghost? An illusionist? A mere hallucination? The girl tried to feel in the darkness for his cloak and hat, but they seemed to have vanished in the darkness just like their owner. She decided to wait for rescue. Someone's got to arrive by evening, she consoled herself. Maybe her friends would come, wondering why she skipped today's lectures. The girl almost calmed down, but the more she waited, the gloomier her mood became. Time dragged on slowly. Leaning against her, like a heavy palm, pressed her into the elevator floor. She waited and waited until despair took hold of her heart again. The girl jumped to her feet and began circling the cramped space of the elevator car. She screamed and screamed for help again and again, again and again. She was hitting the walls, banging her hands on the ceiling, pounding on the control panel, trying to break it open. But to no avail. Then completely exhausted, she lied on the floor and fell asleep. Awakening brought her no joy. She didn't know how much time had passed. Maybe it was a whole day or maybe just a few minutes. She couldn't believe that no one still came for her aid. Her throat was scratchy and terribly thirsty, voice torn from screaming, vocal cords burning with fire. The poor girl didn't know what to do now. This went on for several days. Our heroine realized that if no one pulled her out soon, she would die of thirst, and then, just when her eyelids could barely move, someone's footsteps came from the entryway. The girl felt a rush of strength and jumped to her feet. She pounded on the door with her fists and called out for help. Someone was approaching and the girl's heart was filled with genuine joy. The steps came very close. "Please help, I'm stuck," the poor girl screamed with all of her remaining strength. Someone was standing just beyond the closed doors. Why are they sullen? The girl couldn't understand while begging for help, but whoever was outside, they didn't do a thing. The girl stopped her futile attempts to appeal to them. She even thought they must have left, when suddenly something struck the elevator door with frantic force. The girl screamed in terror, but her cry was cut short by another monstrous blow. The unknown force kept pounding on the doors as if trying to tear them down. The girl regretted 100 times that she had attracted its attention. It was definitely no ordinary human. Soon the blows subsided. Instead, the girl's ears were pierced by the disgusting scratching of fingernails on metal. Something was scratching and tearing inside, but soon the awful sound abruptly stopped as if it had never happened. The girl was in complete silence again. She pressed herself against the opposite wall of the elevator and trembled. Then, just as our heroine calmed down, she heard the incomprehensible sounds again. Now they were coming from somewhere overhead. And, at this very moment, the elevator cabin staggered. With a loud, ominous screech, the elevator jerked downward, but immediately froze, as if clinging to life with the last of its strength. The girl held her breath in horror, afraid to even blink, but the noise came from above once again, and accompanied by a wild, rumbling creaking, the elevator rushed down. The girl's feet came off the floor. She hovered in the air, filled with despair and having no clue about what to do. Just before she fell, she managed to discern a silhouette standing in the elevator. It was as if the laws of gravity had no effect on him. It was the same man in the black coat and hat. Even in the darkness, the girl could see him smiling wickedly, and then a blow followed. The girl's body crashed into the elevator's floor. She didn't feel any pain, even though the impact turned her internal organs into a single bloody mess. Most of her bones shattered like glass, her skull cracked like a ripe watermelon. Blood flooded the entire space of the cabin. The girl's death was instant, but no one has ever found her, nor the elevator itself. For that house was still under construction, and no one has installed the elevator there yet. We were all a little shocked and didn't know what to say. Cordelia, meanwhile, smiled as usual. Well, did you like it? That's not the word for it. Everyone was still processing the story. Deborah, for one, seemingly entered deep prostration. Did I manage? Well, how should I put it? 20% we are pleasantly dumbfounded. 80 scared to death. You received 10 out of 10. Yay! Cordelia applauded with an angelic smile. This story is the scariest one I know. For a moment it seemed like your voice sounded sad. I yawned widely, barely covering my mouth with the palm of my hand. Can't keep my eyes open. Come on, it's too early. I had no intention of stopping the fun, but the following sequence of yawns changed my mind. No, I can't take it anymore. I'm sleepy too. How about a long-awaited rest in beds? A bit of a shame, but sleep is much more important. Wait. Eli made a sly face. Looks like the time is right, Jashini. Huh? Favorite dish? And if there are many of them? Jashini didn't even blink, answering the unexpected question. Deborah, what's zodiac sign are you? Taurus, what are you up to? Eli ignored Deborah, grinning gleefully. Cocktails or tea, Cordelia? Well, faster. Cocktails. Blue or tomato, Shin? Blue. What colour is yellow, Lee? Yellow. Vince, who was driving the car yesterday? Not me. Is your hair long or short, Cordelia? Short? How many lights are in you and Deborah's room, Lee? 2 lamps, 1 floor lamp, 1 chandelier. The words came out before I knew it. Name your family members, Deb. Dad, Mum, Laurel, me. First toy, Unia? My memory isn't so... Never mind, cold or hot, Shin? Meaning? Strawberries or chocolate, Cordelia? Strawberries. What were you writing to Amnea, Lee? A taxi. Unfavourable season, Cordelia? Spring. Do you plan to live a ripe old age, Shin? Isn't it obvious? Your main weakness, Vince. That's... What the hell just happened? What the heck? Is this wild interrogation your new idea of fun? Calm down, I wasn't making fun of you. The insidious professor never slumbers and won't let you all relax even after a day of hard work. He has prepared an unusual task. That late? I'm thinking much more clearly in the morning. That's the point. You had to be exhausted, relaxed, and not one bit suspicious. Do you know what spontaneity means? Of course, it's the ability of a person to react to moments of uncertainty based on their inner impulses. Had a feeling you'd ruin the fun. Could have let the others take some guesses, you know. Come on, man. You guys are fucking university educated. You don't know what the word spontaneity means? Come on. I'm saving us time. Alright, that's correct. We react spontaneously whenever something unusual happens and we can't properly calculate our actions. Basically, during such moments, our true selves are at work, naturally without a second thought. Individuality at its peak, huh? I prefer to think things through in advance. Me too. That's why you'd be the first to come to harm in case of a sudden crisis, says young woman who always acts on impulse. By the will of my heart, Professor prepared a sudden crisis for us? Fire on you. I'm the one handling all crises. Nolan never has time for it, but he enjoys creating weird tasks. And then he analyzes the results, writes a scientific work, and reaps the fruits of success. He's got a consistent pattern. Don't drag it out. In short, you've been answering spontaneously without thinking, and I've been asking the first things that come to mind. Mission accomplished. I was hoping that in the middle of it, Nolan would descend on a white balloon and shock us all, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. That I wouldn't mind to see. And what are the results? No idea. I've recorded the survey on my voice recorder, so let Nolan analyze it later. Voice recorder? Where'd you hide it? A magician never reveals his secrets. Up your butt. I can't imagine what conclusions the professor will draw from this foolishness. Go figure. We'll see in some scientific journal later. Eli brushed it off, showing that he had enough and was no longer going to rack his brain with things he didn't understand. Can't we listen to the recording? I'm curious about it. Sure, why not? Eli turned away, not willing to reveal the recorder's location. When he turned to face us, in his hands was a small silver rectangle. Let's go. I listened with a wry smile to my own ridiculous answers, ashamed of how frightened and lost my voice sounded. Huh? Judging by a sour expression, Deborah shared my feelings. What the heck were you saying? The truth, maybe? Nah, Vincent said he didn't drive the car. Deborah threw a venomous glance at him, expecting an equally venomous response, but Vincent was uncharacteristically silent. Flames were dancing in his vacant eyes. Indeed. Alright. You were asking about Beauty, and you were the one driving it. I would have called my sweetheart by her name. You didn't specify. Who in their right mind would call this hunk-of-junk a car? Cut the insults, please. Don't worry, I've said something foolish as well. Jashini didn't even get half the questions. Is it just me, or have you ignored me? It's just your imagination. You definitely ignored her. We've been discussing our spontaneous answers for a while, doing our best to turn the results into a joke. My friends were smiling, but I had a feeling what a perplexed thoughtfulness lurked in the depth of their eyes. I was surprised myself. Why did I answer that I rode in a taxi? What does it have to do with anything? A vague thought crept somewhere in the depths of my memory, but slipped away as I tried to cling to it. Usually when faced with a problem or a mystery, I would write my thoughts down in a notebook. Thanks to Eli's gift, I could do just that. Having wished my friends good night, I headed for the door. Sweet dreams, Lee, and may the ghosts not disturb you. You're the one who can't sleep without your favourite plush hair. Took Eli a while to think of a decent answer, and by that time I was already gone. A light loomed in the end of the hallway. In that part of the first floor was a forbidden black door office. Curious. I crept closer, not quite sure what to expect, to see or hear. The black door was slightly ajar and a streak of light fell into the corridor. The muttering was coming from the office. Obviously, the professor wasn't sleeping. I prudently decided not to disturb him and turned quietly in the opposite direction. Dangerous. They're dangerous. Must be cautious. A wave of chills ran down my spine. I lurked, curiosity taking the better of me and waiting for the next part. Alas, the door was abruptly slammed shut, plunged the hallway into sticky darkness. I shuddered and hurried to my room, not daring to turn on the light. Shuddered. What was that? What was the professor talking about? Dangerous? What? Or who? Was he pondering some new work of his? Maybe he was developing paranoia and delusions of persecution as a result of his seclusion. As I pictured a bearded man looking around wildly in searching behind furniture for hidden traps, I smiled wryly. It was time to turn my imagination off. Such theories would only be guesses anyway, because all I heard was a couple of torn phrases. Deciding not to get on my nerves, I carefully wrote about today's events in my notebook. Still, why did I say taxi? Spontaneous answers must be intuitive, truthful. Although, Vincent got confused and said he wasn't driving the car. It's more logical to conclude that a person does not say what's on their mind, but gets lost and confused instead. I definitely screw up in a crisis. I closed my notebook, stretched out on the bed and closed my eyes. If the whole week of trip is this exciting, I'll get tired of writing down my impressions. I can't wait for tomorrow. Uh-oh. Amnea holds many secrets. Amnea asks many questions. She asks her guests, "What are you running away from?" That's the end of the demo, isn't it? Well, that's perfect timing too. I was about to wrap it up. We're literally dead on 30 minutes. That's crazy. That was awesome. I'm very much looking forward to the full version of that, because I am very curious to see what happens after this. It's very well made too. Very well made. I'm very impressed. Thanks for there's Questline. Thanks to Questline for pointing this one out and telling me to play it, because it was totally worth doing. We will be back for the full version whenever it comes out. I have no idea what I'm playing next, but we shall see. Until then, thanks for watching, Bruce, and I'll see you in the next one.